I thought, I don't know what you guys think. Hopefully you guys agree with me. Hopefully you agree with me. But I really did think, again, being a big fan of Joe Rogan and somebody who watched Joe Rogan podcast from around, I'm going to say the 400 mark is when I started to watch Joe Rogan episodes, right? Podcast. And I have to say, I've been a big, long-time fan. I started podcasting because of Joe Rogan and Bill Burr, basically. Joe Rogan, Bill Burr, and Tim Ferriss probably made me podcast to begin with. And obviously Bill Burr because he does it solo. But Joe Rogan because he's just a fucking beast. And his consistency is fucking phenomenal. And obviously the time that he goes, it's just crazy. I loved him. Like big fan of his. But of course, there's some hits and misses over the years with these podcasts. And since he's gone on Spotify, there's been maybe more misses than hits. And sometimes when it comes to him interviewing comedians, it can sometimes be a little bit same old. They go over the same ground, about the business, about putting bits together, about who's a murderer, blah, blah, blah. It can get a little bit self-congratulatory, like they're basically sucking their own dicks. But there are some occasions when he interviews comedians where it's really fun and they're having a lot of banter and you can actually feel that Joe's having a good time. Because rarely, sometimes on Joe's podcast, does he allow comedians to tell jokes. It's really strange, I know, because Joe Rogan's a professional stand-up comedian himself. He's got many specials on Netflix. He's been a touring professional comic for a very long time, maybe going on to 3 decades or something like that. But for some reason on his podcast, he hates when comedians go on there and try and be silly, right? And one example of that is Theo Vaughn. Theo Vaughn in his first couple of appearances on Joe Rogan were really awkward and really bad, similar to his Theo Vaughn's interviews with Bill Burr, because Joe Rogan didn't let Theo Vaughn be Theo Vaughn. If you know Theo Vaughn, he's got like a real off-kilter kind of hillbilly type comedy and sense of humor. You don't know if he's telling the truth or if he's telling a lie, but it's just fun and done in the aid of just trying to make jokes and make you laugh, basically. So you don't care if he's lying or not lying, but you know he's just going to be silly. For some reason, Joe Rogan didn't vibe with it and didn't really let him be him. But for some reason, it feels like over time, Joe Rogan has either got to know Theo Vaughn more, or he realized his errors of his mistake on his last episode and basically allowed Theo to do him. And this recent episode of Theo Vaughn was legitimately one of the most funniest I've ever watched. Like, legitimately funny. And I stress it to you guys in the chat. If you guys skip Joe Rogan episodes and you don't check them out, I implore you, please check out the episode of Theo Vaughn and Joe Rogan, because it was really, really good. Like, really, really good. Really funny, really good. And even the episode that Theo Vaughn did on his own podcast, where Joe Rogan was on it was in the same studio, but they still did it there, whatever. That was really fun too. But I thought Theo Vaughn's question that he posed to Joe Rogan, this question about wealth, was incredibly interesting. And I would have really liked to have heard Joe talk about it more. But I guess if you've got money and you're really rich, it's a bit awkward. If you're somebody that maybe attained your wealth late in life, it's a bit awkward to maybe talk about it because you feel like maybe you don't. Do you feel like you don't deserve it? I don't know. Maybe there's something awkward about when you become I would imagine there's something awkward about becoming a multi-millionaire in your late 40s, like how Joe did, right? He became a multi-millionaire maybe in his late 30s, late 40s, but he was never rich from childhood. He maybe grew up in a middle-class family, but he was never wealthy to the point of where he is now. So he made all his wealth like late in life, quote unquote. So maybe when someone asks you a question like, is it scary for people to know that you have so much money? It's hard for you to kind of put it into words because you don't want to explain it because you don't want to come across like a douche. I don't know. But regardless, I thought this question from Theo Vaughn was fucking amazing. And I really did wish Joe would maybe let his guard down and maybe answered it a little bit more truthfully. I really did wish he would have done that. But regardless, I really do recommend you check out the interview. It's a really good one. But this is Theo Vaughn asking Joe Rogan about what it must feel like to sign that Spotify deal that was rumored to be anywhere between $100 million to $300 million. And he only signed that deal with Spotify. Guys, let's stress this. It's a 3-year deal with the option to a 4th to only license his podcast on Spotify. They don't own the IP. They don't own the rights to it. They don't own anything else. They're just licensing it on Spotify exclusively for 3 years with option of a 4th for anywhere in the region between $100 to $300 million. He absolutely smashed it. A deal of the century. And this is before, and this is also, think of it, this is after the fact. Joe Rogan, before the Spotify deal, it was rumored was making anywhere between, I remember reading, anywhere between 10 million to 50 million per year off the podcast alone. From like the rate for the streams, the ads, what you call it, the Google, the YouTube AdSense. He was making anywhere between 10 to 50 million per year just from sitting down and talking like I am on the fucking podcast. And then he got a check for $300 to $100 million. Imagine. But anyway, I've liked this question from 301. I thought it was fucking amazing.
Like, comics always knew that you were doing well, right? Like, but whenever you got your Spotify deal, was it scary that because they attached like such big figures to it in the press, right? Was that scary that people knew that you were wealthy? Was that scary at all?
I wouldn't say it's scary, but it's just one of those things where people like start debating whether or not you should have that money. Why don't they give that money to other people? Why don't you fix the streets and the schools? And why is he going? And then there's some people that just get jealous, so they get angry. And there's a lot of angry, jealous comedians, unfortunately. And there's a lot of comedians that look at other people's success and they feel bad. So they think that you're doing something bad because they feel bad, because they don't like the way it makes them feel when someone's killing it. Like, a lot of comedians are narcissists, and a lot of them are very self-centered and egomaniacs.
Yeah.
And so they think that when you're doing something well or something's going well for you, that somehow or another it takes something away from them.
Why does that happen, do you think?
Famine thinking. People think like there's not enough for everybody. With comedy, there clearly is enough for everybody. With podcasts, there's clearly enough for everybody. And when other people are doing well, it's actually better for everybody, because it like gets more people interested in podcasts, more people getting interested in comedy. That's my take on it. But I've always had that take. I've always like tried to help other comedians. Always.
Oh yeah. I think I try to remember you. I think inspire a lot of people to try and think that way.
Now, the thing that I don't like about this answer to the question, because I really do think that question was really a good question to ask. Like, is it scary for people to know you have that much money? It's similar to asking like a lottery winner. Is it scary? Yeah, lottery winner is a good example. Imagine if someone won the lottery, but they were also a business owner. So you knew they had some level of wealth, but not level of wealth where you win the lottery. So you're a business owner, you own like a carpet store, but then suddenly in your local community, you win like $100 million. It's a valid question to ask that person, hey, is it scary that before everybody knew you were well off, everyone knew that you were the business owner that owned that business, that sells carpets, you lived in a big house in your local neighborhood, you drive a nice car, but now everybody knows categorically you have 100 million or somewhere around that region. How does that feel? Is that like, what's the emotions around it? What does it make you feel like? Do you feel guilty? Blah, blah, blah. Well, see, definitely allergies. I've got this weird cough coming as well. But Joe didn't want to answer it for whatever reason. And then he internalized it and made it about comedy and stuff. And I don't think the comedy thing about other comedians being jealous and stuff is actually a bad thing. Because unfortunately, if you look at Brendan Schaub as a good example, comedy isn't what's that word called? Stand-up comedy isn't a, what's that term that they use? Stand-up comedy isn't where you earn your right, you earn your spot to be there. Stand-up comedy isn't a thing, isn't, let me remember, come on, I got beer brain now. Let me remember the term. What's the term? Stand-up comedy isn't, what's that word called? Where you have to earn your right to be there. There's a chat, no? What's that word called? No one knows the chat, do they? No, they don't. No one knows. Anyway, stand-up comedy isn't a thing where like the best and the funniest become successful. It's never that. Yeah, there we go. Exactly. Meritocracy. That's the word. Sorry, that's the word. Stand-up comedy isn't a meritocracy. I think Brendan Schaub proved that. So I think, in my opinion, this is my opinion personally, again, for not being a stand-up comedian, so don't kill me here. I think comedians who are jealous and disgruntled at the industry, at the scene, or really at people and say, how did he get that? I should get that. I deserve that. I can see where they're coming from, because I don't think Brendan Schaub is the first and last person who is, quote, undeserving of his success. I think there were many of them over the years, but because it's social media and it's the internet, we see him more, and he's more like, he's more visible. But I don't think Brendan Schaub will be the first or the last. So this has been happening for a long time in comedy. So if that's the case, then there's been plenty of people who are really funny, really talented, who spend a lot of time crafting their bits, who go up and do time on stage in different places. They don't just perform in front of their own audience like Brendan does. They go on tour, they go on actual tour, they do triple runs, they really commit to the craft, but for whatever reason, they can't put the pieces together to become successful, to have a HBO special, to be on Comedy Central back in the day, to be on Netflix. They just can't work it out. So it's okay to look at somebody like a Brendan and think, oh my God, how did he deserve that? Because it also looks like in comedy also, for whatever reason, I think it might be the same in every entertainment industry, right? In every entertainment industry, there's either the people that are like at the bottom or at the top. It doesn't feel like there's any many middle people. Like, think about your friends. You might know a friend who plays in a band, and your friend's band, they play the local bar around the corner. They're not on TV, are they? But soon, if they keep doing what they're doing and they become successful, they will get on TV. But there's no middle ground. There's no band middle ground. It's either you're playing local gigs in bars and pubs, or you're on the biggest stage and biggest festivals, or you're playing like festival stages and shit. There doesn't seem to be like a middle ground. So I think if that's the case, then I can understand why some comedians will look at somebody and think, hey, how did he get that? I deserve that more because I'm more talented and blah, 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 blah. But when it comes to Joe Rogan with the money stuff, I think it's more interesting because of the podcasting side of it. Because it's such a crazy number for a podcast. To just sit on the table and talk shit to people for an hour plus and get paid, up to 300 million, it just doesn't make any sense. So I would love to hear him kind of try to articulate it and talk about it, because there is something to be gleaned from it and how he views himself and whatnot. Is he a media organization? Is he somebody that people should refer to as news? Does he feel like it gives him unfair pressure? Does it make it the show hard to do, to be silly because he feels that people are watching and expecting certain things? I would like him to be a bit more, sorry, see allergies for sure, wide ranging in the interview, but for every reason he didn't want to do that.